Welcome to Photosynthesis Virtual Lab Graphing. So we ask you to graph some data that you collected from your lab, and I went ahead and typed in some arbitrary numbers. So do not use what I'm highlighting on your screen right now, because that is not the same as the data that you will collect. So how do you graph this? Well, the easiest and fastest way to graph is to simply copy this information and put it into a Google Sheet. So let's go ahead and do that. There's a number of ways to do it. You can just left click and drag, or you could click in the first box, hold the shift key down, and use the arrow keys to select the, the data. This is a little more accurate. You're not going to drag things around, but both of those work. So then go ahead and left click and copy, or you can hold the control key down and hit C. That works as well. Then go ahead and go over to your biology folder, which you should have, right? As an organized student, you should have a folder that has all of your biology items, and then go ahead and open up a new spreadsheet. So you can click on the plus up here, top left, or you can right click and get a new Google Sheets. I would change the name, and this is going to be the Photosynthesis Lab. Of course, I didn't spell that right. So photosynthesis, there we go. And then go ahead and click in the first box. And then you can right click and paste, or you can hold the key Control and V and it'll paste as well. If you don't like having this top row empty, click on the one, then right click and delete row. The next thing that I recommend that you do is highlight the data. Shift key. Why? Because a lot of programs don't recognize your data unless it's selected. Google Sheets will, but Excel, at least in the past, has not. And then there are plenty of other programs out there that you can use to graph, and you have to select the data. Okay, once you've got that, click on Insert, then click on Chart. Let's go ahead and resize that. And this is a really good starting point. You have to decide if your title is correct. You have to decide if your X and Y axes are correct. And then you might want to check that, does this actually correspond to my data? So in other words, at 120 centimeters, was I really a little bit below 100? So go back over at 120 centimeters. Yeah, I was at 86. So it looks like it's okay, right, based on the data, because you just don't know if you made any mistakes. Now on the right over here is a chart editor, and you can customize and make some changes. So for example, if you're like, oh yeah, but this is not the kind of graph that I want, you could change it here. You could also change your chart and axis title by either clicking on it or by selecting it right here from the drop-down menu. So if your chart title needs to be something different, then just Control A, delete it, and then enter your title here. The same thing for your horizontal, that's this axis right here. You can type in whatever you think it needs to be. So type X axis title here. And then once again, a little typo. And you do the same thing with this. Now, I'm not saying they're incorrect. I'm not saying they are correct. I'm saying that you need to make those choices. And what if you're thinking, well, this is good, but I have to put some effort in and trying to figure out what this exact number is. Go ahead and double click on that again, and then explore. If you go to grid lines and ticks, maybe there's something that we can find that would help us. So if I add in minor grid lines, oh, okay, so I'm adding some bars across. That might be useful, it might not. If I do major ticks, oh, okay, so now I can see where the 50 and the 100 are. But what about the minor ticks? Oh, okay, so now this is 50, and then I have to figure out what the increments are to get me up to 100. So that helps a little bit. And what else can I add? Let's go ahead and close that. Let's do series. And what about a trend line? Well, a trend line doesn't really seem to work for this graph. What about data labels? Ah, so now I know that this point is 86. So are you telling your reader without much effort that this point is 86 instead of them having to come over and guess what it is? 24 at 140. My y-axis is 24, 140. This is 24. So this is something that you might want to consider leaving in. I always encourage my students to go ahead and explore the customize option, and that's how you learn how to use programs like this. And that's really all I've got for you. Enjoy graphing with Google Sheets and Excel.